bandits are preventing it. In fact, I don't know of an exception in history. You go back to British imperialism, it's the same. I mean, even people of the highest moral integrity, like John Stuart Mill, were talking about, well, we have to intervene in India and conquer India because the barbarians can't control themselves. They commit atrocities to bring them the benefits of British rule and civilization and so on. Now, in the United States, the same. Now, take the bombing of Kosovo. That was a critically important event for American intellectuals. And the reason had to do with what was going on during the 90s. The 90s are, for the West, not just the US, France and England are worse. It's probably the low point in intellectual history for the West, I think. I mean, it was like a comic strip mimicking a satire of Stalinism, literally. You take a look at the New York Times and the French press, the British press. It was all full of talk about how there's a normative revolution that has swept to the West. For the first time in history, a state, namely the United States, the leader of the free world, is acting from pure altruism. Clinton's policy has entered into a noble phase with a saintly glow. On and on. I'm quoting from the liberals.
Now, this particular humanitarian charade
was pre-Kosovo.
Right, and it was specific in a sense because it was based on the claim that it was preventing genocide. Let me just read something that you said in an interview around the time of the bombing. You said, "The term genocide, as applied to Kosovo, is an insult to the victims of Hitler. In fact, it's revisionist to an extreme." What did you mean by that?
First of all, let me just fix the timing.
Right.
The things I've been quoting are from the late 90s.
Before Kosovo.
Yeah. Now, they needed some event to justify this massive self-adulation. Okay? Along came Kosovo, fortunately. All right, so now we have to stop genocide. What was the genocide in Kosovo? We know from the Western documentation what it was. In the year prior to the bombing, according to just the Western sources, about 2,000 people were killed. Killings were distributed. A lot of them were coming, in fact, according to the British government, which was the most hawkish element of the alliance, up until January 1999, a majority of the killings were by the KLA guerrillas, who were coming in, as they said, to try to incite a harsh Serbian response, which they got, in order to appeal to Western humanitarians to bomb. Well, we know from the Western records that nothing changed between January and March. In fact, up until March 20th, they indicate nothing. March 20th, they indicate an increase in KLA attacks. But it was ugly, but by international standards, I mean, almost invisible, unfortunately. And it was very distributed. If the British are correct, the majority was coming from KLA guerrillas.
And as it later turned out, the KLA was also receiving financial and military support.
I mean, they were being supported by the CIA in the early, in those months. Okay, so that's, not to call that genocide, is really to insult the victims of the Holocaust. If that's genocide, then the whole world is covered with genocide. In fact, it's kind of striking that right at the same time that Western intellectuals were praising themselves for their magnificent humanitarianism, much worse atrocities were going on right across the border in Turkey. That's inside NATO, not at the borders of NATO. They were saying, how can we allow this at the borders of NATO? Yeah. How about inside NATO, where Turkey was had driven probably several million Kurds out of their homes, destroyed about 3,500 villages, laid waste to the whole place, every conceivable form of torture and massacre that you can imagine, killed nobody knows how many people, we don't count our victims, tens of thousands of people. How were they able to do